So we're going to start shading our puppy with cocoa. Now I'm doing them on a lot bigger surface, so you're going to use your 1/2 inch brush for the regular size pattern. You're going to shade along the outside of your ears. Nice and soft. Then you're going to shade inside your ear. You're going to shade across the top of his head and really walk it down. So it comes down like so. And the same thing on this side. Once you've shaded there, you can shade on top of his paws. Again, you want to really walk it down. Nice and strong under his chin. I won't do the other pots, the same thing. And the same thing with that ear. And then we'd switch to a smaller brush to shade around the eyes and the nose. I'm going to use the bigger brush to shade here though. And the same thing on this side. So you'll go ahead and shade him all in cocoa, walk it out nice and far because we're going to strengthen it up later. So I'm going to shade around my eye. You're going to use your 3/8. You don't shade along the bottom. So it's coming up and down. And we're going to shade around the nose. Nice and soft. And just strengthen up. Really want to walk that cocoa shading out. We're going to strengthen up our shading using a smaller brush. So now you would go to your 3/8 or a number 10, and you're going to shade the very same places you did. You can soften your shading with a mop if you'd like. And we're doing this with the milk chocolate. Nice and soft. And when I shade around my eyes, I will switch to my 1/2 inch. So everything that you shade, you don't want it to come out and cover completely all of your cocoa. You just want to strengthen it up. So that's what you're going to go for next. I'm going to shade the little marks on the paws. First I'm going to do it with my honey brown, and then I'll go back when it's dry and do it with the milk chocolate to strengthen. You're going to dry brush a highlight by taking your dome stippler, picking up almondine, and we're going to scuff it off on our towel. I'm going to dry brush inside his ear, dry brush on his cheeks, the upper part of his cheeks under the eye. I'm going to dry brush on his forehead, pop up his highlight, and a little bit on his feet. There's a little on his ear. You may find that A smaller dry brush or Lunar Blender will work better for on there because it is a smaller area. So this is the dry brushing that we're going to do to pop up the highlight on his face. I'm going to thin down Bittersweet, and we're going to put the little nostril holes here. Just thin down with a round, and you just blot them with your finger so that they're a little transparent and they look like little open holes. Make sure you're using a clean finger second time around. So we're going to do that, and then I'm going to go to his eyes. I'm going to wet coat. You're going to use a liner. I'm using a round because my eyes are quite a bit bigger. So I'm going to apply a wet coat of Royal Navy on his eye, and while it's wet, I just pick up a little of Colonial Blue, work it in on my palette, and just blend it in the middle. So it just blends in and creates a highlight in the middle section. So you're using a liner and it'll work better with that. Now the highlight on this, you're going to use a 1/8 dry brush. I'm going to use a 1/4 inch. When I find it. And I'm going to pick up my warm white, tap it off on my palette, and I'm going to just put it up here in the corner. I guess there's no corner in an oval. And I'm just going to give it a twist. So it gives a little dry brushed highlight. And then there's a little tiny comma with your liner. In that eye. It's going to get outlined with lamp black, thin down. And I'll outline between the blue and the white. Too much water on there. And then I'll also outline along the outer edge of the white. Whoops. I'll make that line a little thicker. And then we're going to add our lashes. Now the lashes, I want to thicken the top of the line first to make a thicker lash line. You may find it easier to turn your piece and pull your lashes towards yourself. So I start in, press a little bit, and pull towards myself. Now these lashes, I need to make these a bit bigger because my piece is enlarged. But you press at the edge of the eye and pull outwards. The eyebrows are done later in Bittersweet. The eyebrows are not black, so don't go ahead and think I'll just do those at this point in time. So you're going to go ahead and do your breathing holes and your eyes. We're going to add the features to his face. I'm going to give him Bittersweet eyebrows, thin down with my liner. I'm going to add some outlining. Now you can outline after you do the nose if you prefer. Just nice, thin, bittersweet. And you're going to add the little lines on his paws. I'm going to line his ear. You have to make sure it's thinned down. We're only looking for the inside lines that separate his features. I don't need to come all the way down here on the face against the black. There's going to be a couple of highlight lines with the almondine, pardon me, with almondine. I'll thin that down. I'm going to add a little commas, highlights on the top of his cheek, and a swipe of a highlight on his ears. After we shade his nose, there'll be a highlight on his nose as well in almondine. So we're going to shade his nose in Napa Red next. I'm going to shade the nose with Napa Red. Walk it out nice and far. And so it's shaded all the way around. And then we're going to use the 3/4 to shade his hat. So I want it to come nice and far because we're going to stipple his little fur, and if you don't bring your shading up far enough, when you stipple the fur, you cover the shading. So I shade all the way around, and we're going to create the spot where the hat folds over. So I'll just shade in here and create that fold. You can create a crease in it if you want, doesn't matter. So I'll dry that and I'll shade it again to walk it out nice and far. So I'm going to dry brush Fiery Red in the middle of the hat as a highlight, and I'll dry brush a little on the creases to pick it up, and just a wee bit off to the right hand side of the nose. This is too big. And then there's also a little almondine highlight line on the nose. And the Fiery Red dies down, so you can take and just pull a little line with your liner along the edge of the hat, and that'll just give it a little extra boost there. Alrighty. So I'm going to just strengthen some shading a little bit with thinned bittersweet chocolate in that little bit of an ear section. Down here, the top of his paws. So it just strengthens that a little bit more. And just in here, whoops, I'll just go through that again. Just in here by his muzzle. So it's there and there on the top of the paws. It's just going to strengthen up at those little dark areas. And we're going to go to the holly. So I'm going to do a couple of steps, pardon me, on our leaves. We're going to take and we're going to shade down the middle of each piece of holly. So you'll go around and shade on each one. Now I've done this one over here already, so by the time you come back, it'll be dry and you can shade the opposite side. So you're shading down both sides of the middle of the leaf. Once you've done that, we're going to take a dome stippler, and I'm going to dry brush light Hauser green in the light section of my leaf. Give us a highlight. And I'm going to thin light Hauser green, and I'm going to pull my vein down the middle. I'm going to loosely outline. So when I say loosely, it does not have to completely touch the outline to the holly leaf. And then I'm going to put in my veins. I'll pull them from the center outwards. Again in the light Hauser. Now for pieces like we shaded up the middle of all of our holly pieces, we also have to shade where a leaf crosses over another leaf. So I'll put my black green and shade where those separate. Right here, this is two leaves. Whoops, flipped that brush the wrong way. So I'll shade right here. So that puts this leaf on top of this one. So anywhere you have that, you're going to shade in black green, as well as anywhere that you have something overlapping, like our paws. So I will shade black green, paint towards the paw and the water part of my brush out. Flip it around, come on this side. That way I'm using the paint on both sides of the brush. Walk it out, lean to the water part of the brush. And then I'll continue with all of those steps until I have all of the holly done. And I'm going to, once we have that done, we're going to take matcha green and thin it down and highlight the tips on some of the holly leaves. We're going to start on the brim. So I'm going to just take my dome stippler, rather than using, and it's nice and loud, rather than using a deerfoot, I want this polka dotty type effect for this. So we see little round balls like a lamb wool or something. Lately that's the thing around here, lamb's wool. So I'll go through. I'm not necessarily painting the whole thing again. I'm just putting dots here and there. Then I'm going to pick up warm white and I'm going to come through like so. So you see that you can still see some of the neutral gray. I want that nice round fuzzy edge to it rather than a flat smooth edge. So I'll go through, reloading in the warm white as I go. Doing the pom-pom as well. Now I want it to be a little bit grayer next to the brim and along the ends. Just taper it in a bit so it gives the look that it's rounded. So I'll add a bit of gray there, just soften it back through with the white a bit. And then I'm going to touch into Snow White and come more in. I'm going to take some of that gray back off, and I'm going to touch into Snow White and come from the center and add a heavier, stronger white. So it's just from the center and it fades back a bit. We want that to give us the highlight that rounds forward. So that's going to bring that a bit forward, and I'll put a little bit of that Snow White just kind of in the middle section of the pom-pom. So there's his hat now, his brim on his hat.